Thank you, Pak Zainal. I have two questions. The first one is, I was very delighted and even surprised to listen to your explanation that the relationship between Shia Iran and Sunni Saudi before Reza Pahlavi's reign is quite smooth, so meaning no conflict before Iranian Revolution, right? So, if we see the current conflict, meaning the current conflict, it means cause is the political issue, right? So, what I'm going to ask is the political issue is the only one that brings about the current conflict? So if yes, I think it's okay. But if no, so we come to maybe there is the issue of the Shia teaching. So which teaching of Shia that becomes the main cause of the current conflict? This is the first question. Number two, you propose to remove the anti-takfiri policy, both structurally and culturally. But we understand that the term kafir and its huge derivation in the Quran is really there in the Quran. So how to reconcile this fact? It is there in the Quran, but we want to remove it. So how to reconcile this situation? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zainal. I just want, you mentioned about there is serious concern on violence-related issues related to sectarianism in Indonesia, mainly the Shia-Sunni conflict and also the Ahmadi Sunni conflict as well. I just want to know whether these conflicts, violent conflicts, exist just recently or also happened even before the Indonesian Reformation in 1998. And if assuming that the case is just more recent, could it be possible because of more freedom, more democratization, more liberty, less power of the state controlling society, actually can cause increasing sectarian and also violence because of lack of religious regulation?
Okay, so well, I think Iran and Saudi before 1979, I would not say that the Sunni-Shia relation was harmonious. What I wanted to say is that the relation was not conceived in terms of madhab. So when the Saudi and Iran has good relation, it's not good relation between Sunni and Shia, but good relation between these two authoritarian regimes. They are both, I mean, non-democratic regimes, and they have good relations. And the Shia did not come up, the Shia issue, not because they like the Shia, but because it's not relevant. So it was not even there. So after 1979, there was, of course, different political system in Iran, and it does not good for the Saudi interest as well as the interest of many other Arab countries which used to have good relationship with the Pahlavis Iran. Then this issue of identity was used to marginalize Iran. So yeah, so the question which I don't say that when I say that the main issue is political, that doesn't mean that the teachings themselves are not relevant. Of course, I mean, if the Shia teachings are exactly the same as the Sunni teachings, there is nothing to be manipulated or to be exploited. Because of the differences, then there are, I mean, there are grounds in Islam to say that or in Sunni Islam to say that certain teachings of Shia are deviating, etc. But this is exactly the same with the ISIS. It's difficult, I think, to say that ISIS is not Islamic. They can refer to Quran, they can refer to Hadith, etc. If you say that ISIS is not Islamic, you deny one of the main sources of the problem, which is how Quran or Hadith is being read or interpreted. So you have to deal with that. You have to give alternative interpretations. So, but the ISIS, of course, they refer to the Quran. We can say that their interpretations are mistaken, etc. But it's difficult to say that they are quote unquote not Islamic. So the issue is how. I mean the competitions between different interpretations. So your question, which teachings of Shia may contribute to this the conflict? Well, I don't know exactly. There are many issues. It may be used in different places, in different time, and I don't study it well, so I'm afraid to say anything about it. But also, I think it's not very relevant to point to which teaching, because even within the Sunni, I mean the same teaching, etc., you can still, I mean, with sectarianism, it's difficult to stop at a certain line. You can always try, and this is the trend with the defamation, the use of the defamation of religion law in Indonesia. You try to make it, to imagine the true Islam as increasingly it becomes a smaller and smaller circle. So if you see the trend in the use of the defamation of religion law, first it was used against the Ahmadi. Well, actually, when it was created in 1965, Ahmadi was not the target of the law. Ahmadi became the target of the law only after 1998. Ahmadi has been there for a long time, but it was not the subject of that law. Initially, in 1965, it was aliran kepercayaan, mostly the syncretic beliefs. And then Ahmadiyah, and then Shia. And then now in some places, like in Aceh, for example, certain Sufi groups. And then it becomes, I mean, the circle becomes smaller and smaller. So now it's not only Islam, but Sunni Islam. Sunni Islam, Shafi'i, Sunni Islam. And then it becomes smaller and smaller. So that's the trend. So it's difficult to put a point where it will stop. So that's why I said probably it's not very relevant to find out which teachings of the Shia, because even Sunni, they can be accused of certain things if their interpretations is different, if there is an intention to make the smaller and smaller circle. About takfir. Kafir is in the Quran, of course, but how do you understand kafir? Is kafir non-Muslim? Is a non-Muslim all non-Muslims kafir or not? There are different interpretations again. Some scholars would say some non-Muslims may not be kafir, some Muslims even may be kafir, with different understanding of the term. So I'm not proposing to get rid of the term kafir from the Quran. No, I mean it's there, but how do you read it? How do you understand it? So that's the main issue. Yeah, Ehsan's question, sectarian related violence in Indonesia. Yeah, my main point is actually among the Ahmadis, as far as I know from all the literature which I read, there was no violent conflicts to the extent that people die. Before the conflict in Cikasik in the year, I think 2000, 2006 or 2007. So it's recent. So the animosity, the debate has been there for decades. But you see one person, one Ahmadi died only a few years ago. And there is only one person actually. But in other places there was no problem. With the Shia issue, it was only in 2012. There was a conflict of some groups accusing another group of Shia, and this is in a very small isolated village. I don't know, maybe among the Indonesian there are some who come from East Java. They will know how isolated is the village of Karanggayam. Karanggayam is an isolated village in Sampang. Sampang is one district in an island, Madura, separate from Java actually. So it's very, very small conflict, but then it was used as and again, like I said, there are many other explanations of why that violence took place. Some says it's about family conflicts between members of family, conflicts around the issue of election. Again, election is now become an important channel of conflict. And again, that's only one person died. Okay, I said only. I'm not belittling the case, but it's not a big issue. So why is it because of more freedom? Well, I would say yes. Partly it's a consequence of the democratization. You could not imagine that some group would accuse other groups or even attack certain groups did violence in the time of Suharto. For him, stability is number one. He has enemies, so he can do violence, but not one group against the other group. Of course, there are communal violence even during his time, but there was no communal religious violence. He would not let that to happen. So, after democratization, one consequence of democratization, which is positive, is the weakening of the state. So weak state is good. I mean, if you compare with the authoritarian strong state. But also, so the state has weakened, the society strengthened. And there's more freedom, so even groups, hardliner groups, which could not exist before 1998, they could exist after 1998. So if you remember Abu Bakar Bashir, during the time of Suharto, he ran to Malaysia, right? After democratization, he returned to Indonesia. And then he can manage, he has these organizations, etc. And there are a number of other figures as well. Hizbut Tahrir, it couldn't exist during the time of Suharto, but it existed after the democratization. So partly it's a consequence of democratization. This morning, I think you probably you asked the question, democracy creating violence. Was it you or probably other question? Yes, in a sense, like I said, it's a consequence of democratization. There are certain things which are difficult to imagine in a non-democratic authoritarian regime. But also, democracy has produced many really good things. So we have to remember that. And with democracy, well, there is, it reminds me of, I think Amartya Sen, who said that there is no famine in democracy. Is that Amartya Sen, I think? Yeah, because in a democracy, I mean, a government which doesn't do their job, so that people become hungry, it will not be elected in the next election. So the same idea, actually, we can think, I mean, a government which lets bad things to happen to minority groups, for example, ideally, they will not be elected in the next election. So democracy has a mechanism, ideally, to choose for a good government. But unfortunately, what I have seen in Indonesia, for example, sometimes the issue of minority religious groups is not a priority. That's sad, but well, at least with democracy we have mechanisms to fight for our cause. I gave the example, even the Ahmadis, a group which was persecuted, it dared to go to the Constitutional Court bringing a law which became the basis of their persecution and say that this law is not constitutional. That's not going to happen in a non-democratic society.
Okay, for the last round, I'll pick 3 questions.
I have one question, sorry. This, I think, like, you know, when you mentioned that it's acceptable for the Majlis Fatwa to issue fatwa that Shiites are, you know, considered as heretic and deviant, and it's okay because it's fine because they have the authority to do that. I think this is my personal opinion. I mean, that basically fuels the sectarianism in our community, especially in this country, because you see that in every Friday sermon, Shiites are vilified, right? Apart from liberals and apart from, you know, other groups, but Shiites were the main target. And recently, I think just yesterday or 2 days ago, Iraqi Shiites, not Malay Shiites, Iraqi Shiites, who had the gathering to celebrate Muharram. As you know, that 10th of Muharram is, you know, a very auspicious day to the Shiites in remembrance of Imam Hussein, and they were detained. They were detained by religious police, and I think all these religious police, they got their mandate from the fatwa being issued by this religious council. So if you say that it's okay, it's fine, I think there's a problem over there, right? So I think that the most important thing is for us to go back to this Amman Declaration, when they declared the 8 mazahib, they're all what do you call? They're all believers, right? They're all under this. They should be considered as Islam or Muslim, and you know, they should not be defiled as deviants or as murtad or as out of the fold of Islam. They're Ahli Qiblah, we call it. Yeah, Ahlul Qiblah. Yeah, yeah. I would like to have a comment on that, and probably Afika will ask for the floor to design anyone else.
Before I move to the question, I just want to share briefly to Dr. Zain and also Dr. Farouk and Dr. Hefner as well. We had a very interesting discussion this afternoon. One of the interesting discussion was about FPE, or the Front Pembela Islam. So in which the discussion circles around before, this will relate to my earlier question as well, before the Reformasi. So more or less we can understand it that Indonesia have a very strong state which dominates everything. Post-Reformasi, there's some kind of democratization and also some elements of the weakening of the state. This also involves some aspect that the state in certain way becomes less effective, less efficient, and in some way don't really function in some positive aspects. So what I'm saying is that in one of the points which is being shared, there are some situations when, as an example, gempa bumi, bencana, or like problems in the society, FPI or FPE is among the groups which will respond soonest. That is one case. It has also been touched that in some cases maybe related to corruption and of course about Islamic morality issues, gambling, drinking, prostitutions. It is being seen. It was discussed before that sometimes the police cannot really deal with the problem. So So the local communities themselves, sometimes they come up with some complaint, and it is this group like the FPE which actually responded. Of course, it was discussed that the procedures were not being taken in the rightfully and the legal way, but actually for the community, at least some of the problems were dealt with. What is your comment? Because there was actually an interesting discussion which is being shared just now. And as well relates back to my earlier question, could this relate to when the government is not functioning and then communities will come up with their own initiative, and the Islamists may have their own way, or different groups may have like their own way, but at the end it would like risking the whole order and system of a society?
Thank you, Afika. Just a quick question. I'm curious about, because I'm very suspicious about this state-driven pluralism, but I'm more interested in knowing how civil society manage pluralism. One of the more recent phenomenon, I think, is the term called, I'm not sure it has been an academic study or not, this term called political correctness. I want to know because during Trump, during the election of US election, when Trump was elected, this term political correctness has been a worldwide phenomenon. You see, and it has the effect of the political correctness has been impacted the behavior of the electorate. So I want to know, is political correctness as a phenomenon or as a term can be used as an alternative, or do you think it is an effective mechanism to regulate hate speech, to regulate discriminatory statement and everything? So
What is it?
political correctness. Yeah, if you heard about it. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I said. Yeah, it's a difficult issue. Strictly speaking, it's acceptable that certain Muslim group issuing a fatwa that Shia is outside Islam. Strictly speaking, yes. I mean, there has to be that space. Although it's not nice at all. I mean, this is in a civil or civilized conversation. You don't do that, I think. I mean, accusing, well, you're not Muslim, etc. Of course, that's not nice. I said that to make a point that the main issue actually for me is not in the Majlis Ulama or so what is the institution here which issue fatwa? Yeah, the Mufti. I think, well, probably Mufti is different position. But what I mean is that the big issue is if the state makes a decision about religion and then enforce it, saying the state, I mean saying that Islam is this. Those who are against it are not Muslims, you go to prison or you cannot exist, you cannot organize, etc. That's the main issue. But as a theological discourse, I think it should be allowed. Again, it's not nice. It's not nice as a social, I mean, in social interaction. Sorry? Yes. I mean, it's not good. It's not good, but so the question is, should we make it illegal? Probably I should, that's my question. And my answer, probably no. It's not a legal issue. It's more like a cultural or maybe also political issue. Because I don't want to give the state the power to either say that a certain group Islam or not Islam. So that's my main worry. So and that's where things go bad usually. But if you take away, I mean, the theological, if you limit or restrict the theological discourse, in general, I don't think that's a good move. And of course, I agree with the Risalah Aman, and as I said, it should be scaled up. I would be happy, I mean, if this becomes influential, much more happier than if the Majlis Ulama Indonesia, for example, issue a fatwa against Shia, for example. Of course, that's not good. But yeah, I'm trying to open up a non-legal space which is less restrictive, but this is a space in which you can do more, actually. So, and what would you do, I mean, like in the case of whether it's in Malaysia or Indonesia, what would you do to the Mufti or the Majlis Ulama in Indonesia? Can you say you should not issue this or that fatwa? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When they have the authority to give an edict
Yeah.
or fatwa,
Yeah.
certain thing,
Yeah.
especially very difficult matters such as
Mhm.
this.
Mhm.
It's not going to be good for the citizen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I agree. Probably I'm too liberal. I don't know. But also, yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, like probably like in the U.S., maybe with the I mean, when there's law enforcement which is really good, etc. Maybe it's more it's okay. I mean, for certain people to say you are not Muslim, etc., because they would not dare to take action. But maybe not in Indonesia or Malaysia. So we probably should be careful. Yes. So I accept, yeah, your suggestion.
Do you have any comments on it?
I don't really have anything insightful. I would just say on the matter of hate speech and blasphemy and things like that, it's striking that even in the quote-unquote democratic West, the range of variation. The United States is exceptional in the degree to which it prioritizes freedom of speech, including freedom of speech that is hateful but not necessarily inciting violence. You can go after, but in the United Kingdom, as I'm sure all Malaysians know, they have very strict laws against basically blasphemy and hate speech against religion.
But it's not only freedom of speech, but also freedom of conscience.
Yes.
Where do you do that?
You mean with regard to the issue of the MUI and the fatwa?
Yeah. Because they're shines and because they're talking about freedom of conscience.
Yes. Well, you're talking about freedom of conscience, and you're also talking about organizations like the MUI, which have much greater authority and so can project their views much more broadly across society. And I'm actually sort of between the two of you on this. I think I lean a little bit more in Zainal's direction, but especially where the state is capable of enforcing the rule of law so that there still is a backup limit. But I think it's a very, very difficult issue.
I can say if I'm the president of Indonesia, I will not close. I will not close or disband MUI, the Majlis Ulama. But if I give them funding, I will say you have to be nice. Otherwise, I'll take away the funding. I mean, that's what I said as the political gesture. Government can do that. I mean, you're not helping with this fatwa. So be careful with that fatwa. So I think I have the authority to say that if I'm the president. And I think to some extent Jokowi is doing that. Because the Majlis Ulama, they have to get some funding. Now they have the big source of funding is from halal certification. Now the government is taking away some of it, with the new law, giving some authority to the Ministry of Religious Affairs and Ministry of Health, which is the right place. And halal certification is a big business. That's one thing. And then the Islamic bank. Each Islamic bank, it has to have, the board. And one of them at least has to be one of the ulama from the Majlis Ulama. So they get money also from there. So maybe limit that. I mean, if you're not nice, then if you're not helpful, then you're not going to get this. That's one way which you can do, I think. So, so that's what I'm going to do if I'm a president. So, and also, if I'm the president, I'm not going to outlaw FPI. So again, looking at FPI, I think you have to see, this is also the FPI rhetoric, that they help in times of disaster, etc. Actually, it's interesting that FPI has two major wings. One is the wing of Amar Ma'ruf, the other one is Nahi Munkar. So Amar Ma'ruf is helping people. Nahi Munkar is fighting maksiat and things like that. So they're civil when they help people, but when they're trying to do Nahi Munkar, then they become violent. So, and they always say, well, we always give warning, etc. First warning, second, third, the police didn't do anything, then we do it ourselves. Of course, the big question is, who do they think they are, that they can take law into their hands? I mean, they're not the only citizens who are not satisfied with the way the state is being run, with the way the situation. Some people, they don't have money, some people, they don't have jobs. It doesn't mean that if they are not satisfied, they can take law into their own hands. So there are ways to do that. I mean, you can do advocacy and others, and many non-governmental organizations, they do that. They go to the parliament, they go to the ministry, they publish, they shame the government, they blame the government, they go even to international organizations, they try to change the government. So FPI should do the same. If you take the law into your own hands, then that's vigilante. I mean, that's imposing your own will. And if FPI is allowed to do that, if all organizations who are not satisfied with the way the government works, for example, if they are allowed to take the law into their own hands, then what's going to happen? Chaos, of course. So so I would say I would not ban FPI, but anytime they do, I mean, they do violence, then they have to be punished. The big problem, I think, especially this is the 10 years before Jokowi, that's the best time for this group, because the government for 10 years, they don't care. I mean, like FPI and others, and they became bigger and bigger. And now we saw the fruit in last year, for example. People ask, why is it suddenly they became so big? Well, it's not suddenly. I mean, they have been processing for 10 years. They do many things, and the government didn't do. I mean, the government they are indifferent to their violence. Now they became a big issue. So I would say anytime that kind of group they breach the law, then they have to be punished. Punish them, but not the organization, because the organizations can come and go. And I would actually, for me, the same thing with Hizb ut-Tahrir. Personally, I disagree with the banning of Hizb ut-Tahrir, although interestingly, I see, and this is another point which shows when the state is doing something, it will have effect. Even though now the Hizb ut-Tahrir is trying to question the president's decision, you can already see that people have more awareness of Hizb ut-Tahrir, that it has exclusive agenda, etc. In some university, they are more aware of the existence of this group. So it's already working. So I would say if you are not satisfied with the way the police do or the governments do, then you need to strengthen them. And that brings me to the third question. I didn't mean about promoting state-driven pluralism, but my argument is to say that you cannot do away with the state. I mean, you have to I mean, the state is there. It can do many bad things, but it can do good things also. And it can, certain things, it can only be done by the state. I think, again, probably it's different from one context to another. Civil society organizations, I think, has to also work with the state. I mean, trying to scale up their ideas, trying to institutionalize their ideas, part of it through state institutions, because otherwise other groups, they will influence the state. So this is the interesting thing about the Hizb ut-Tahrir. This is not a political party. They said to their members not to vote, but they can have huge influence in the government because they can penetrate, they can infiltrate the government, the governmental offices. So they can do that. They can influence the state. So what I said is that the pluralist forces should also use that avenue, not to work only for them and then marginalizing the others, but to bring up their ideals about citizenship, equal citizenships and others into the state level. So I will not ask the state to support only me, to support only pluralist groups, but at least they don't support the anti-pluralist groups. So the problem is when the state, through certain laws like the blasphemy law, they already create the uneven playing field. So if they can maintain equal playing field, safe for everyone, that's good enough for me. So yeah, I'm not for state-driven pluralism, especially if you think of, for example, Singapore, maybe, where there is harmony, etc., but it's really state engineered, less freedom, I think. I'm not for that kind of pluralism, but I think we should also not deny the importance of the state. Thank you.